Have you ever wondered how the wealth of history's richest men stacks up against today's billionaires? Forget Bezos or Musk. The Bible's richest men, Solomon, Job, and Abraham, had fortunes so vast they defy modern imagination. But their stories aren't just about unimaginable riches. They're about faith tested to its limits, devastating losses, and life-changing decisions that shaped their legacies. Now here's the question. If their wealth were calculated in today's money, what would it reveal about their lives and about ours? Stay with me because the answers might change the way you see success forever. Modern wealth often comes with its own tests. Success can divide families, break faith, and distract from purpose. But for Solomon, Job, and Abraham, their fortunes were not just measures of their success. They were divine tests. How did they navigate the dangers and blessings of such wealth? And how can their experiences teach us to handle the challenges of faith and success today? Imagine a time when wealth was measured not in bank accounts, but in gold, livestock, and the power to shape nations. Now, picture three men who rose above their peers, their fortunes so vast that they became legends, their names written in the pages of the Bible. But their stories are not just about riches. They're about faith tested to its limits, unimaginable choices, and the weight of a legacy that still echoes today. How did they achieve such greatness? And what did it cost them? Solomon, the wisest king to ever rule, started his reign humbly, asking God not for riches but for wisdom. Yet as his gold multiplied and his empire expanded, whispers of temptation began to creep into his court. Was his wealth a blessing or a trap? Job, the wealthiest man in UZ, lived in peace until everything was torn away in a single day. Stripped of his fortune, his family, and his health, only one question remained: would his faith endure the fire? Then there was Abraham, a wanderer who carried the promise of a nation in his heart and the weight of unimaginable wealth on his journey. His riches sustained him, but his trust in God defined him. Yet even his faith was tested on a mountain where he faced a choice that no man should ever have to make. 3 men, 3 paths, and one burning question: can true faith survive the allure and the loss of great wealth? Their stories are not just ancient history, they hold lessons for us today. How did Solomon, Job, and Abraham navigate the dangers and blessings of their incredible fortunes? And if their wealth were converted into today's money, would it rival modern billionaires? Stay with us as we uncover the astonishing value of their riches and the profound truths hidden in their journeys. You'll never see wealth the same way again. In different eras across centuries and kingdoms, 3 men stand out in history for their wealth, wisdom, and unwavering faith: Solomon, Job, and Abraham. Each is legendary in his own right, marked by extraordinary blessings that come with equally extraordinary tests. They lived in different times in vastly different worlds, but their stories converge on the themes of faith, fortune, and the complexities of human devotion. For Solomon, the son of King David, wealth and wisdom define his reign. He inherits the kingdom of Israel at its height, a golden age where the temple he built shines as a beacon for all nations. Solomon's fortune was unimaginable, with tons of gold entering his treasury each year. Yet, as his wealth grows, so do the complexities of his life. Can wisdom and wealth coexist without corruption? As your resources grow, do they pull you closer to your values or further away? Solomon's life began with a choice that shaped his legacy. When God appeared to him in a dream, offering anything he desired, Solomon asked for wisdom to govern his people. This humility pleased God, who not only granted him unparalleled wisdom but also riches, honor, and peace. Yet, as Solomon's kingdom expanded, so did the temptations that came with wealth. What would you choose if given unlimited blessings? How would you guard your heart against the allure of power? In the distant land of Uz, Job's life is a world apart from Solomon's kingdom. He lives in an earlier age, an era defined by tribal societies and a deep sense of moral justice. Job's wealth is vast, measured in herds and servants. Yet, unlike Solomon, Job's wealth is built on a foundation of reverence for God, humility, and righteousness. What happens when blessings become tests? Are you prepared to hold on to your faith if your circumstances change overnight? Job's life reflects a deep connection between faith and prosperity. He was a man of integrity who cared for the vulnerable, helped the poor, and lived with gratitude for the blessings God had given him. His family thrived under his leadership, and his prayers rose daily to heaven. But even as Job walked in righteousness, forces unseen were preparing to challenge everything he held dear. What is the foundation of your faith? Can it endure when your world begins to crumble? Even further back in time, in the age of patriarchs, Abraham roams the lands of Canaan. Originally from Ur of the Chaldeans, he is a man of immense faith and substantial wealth. With flocks and silver, Abraham's riches serve a purpose beyond his lifetime. He is guided by a divine promise, a covenant with God that his descendants will be as numerous as the stars. What sustains you in times of uncertainty? Is it what you own or whom you trust? Abraham's journey is defined by a deep tension, the promise of a great nation and the long years of waiting for its fulfillment. His wealth grew through alliances, careful stewardship, and blessings from rulers like Pharaoh. Yet his riches were not the centerpiece of his life. They were a means to sustain his obedience to God. How do you view your resources? Are they tools for God's purposes, or have they become your ultimate goal? Each man begins his journey with unique blessings and responsibilities. Solomon, crowned in the glory of Israel's greatest prosperity, stands as a symbol of wisdom and divine favor. He is a young king with a choice before him. Will he rule with humility and wisdom, or will the allure of power draw him away from his purpose? The palace is filled with riches, but Solomon knows that his true wealth lies in the wisdom he received from God. Do you know what your true wealth is? Or are you chasing something that could compromise your purpose? Job's life, on the other hand, radiates a different kind of peace. His wealth isn't just in livestock and land, it's in the love of his family, the respect of his community, and his relationship with God. He prays daily, offering sacrifices for his children, fearing that they may have sinned in their hearts. But as Job sits in his prosperity, he remains unaware that his faith will soon be tested in ways beyond comprehension. What is the foundation of your peace? Is it built on something temporary or on something eternal? Abraham's journey is that of a wanderer, a man with no fixed home yet rich beyond measure. His wealth sustains his family and his followers as they move from place to place. But more than wealth, Abraham has a covenant with God, a promise of a nation that will rise from his descendants. He lives with an inner tension, knowing that his riches are nothing compared to the promise, yet each day he wonders how long he must wait for its fulfillment. Are you waiting patiently for what you've been promised, or is impatience leading you to take matters into your own hands? These men lived in different times, but their stories share a common thread. Their wealth was not simply a blessing, it was a test. For Solomon, it was a tool for building a kingdom but also a trap that exposed his vulnerabilities. For Job, it was a sign of divine favor but also the stage for a trial that would shake him to his core. For Abraham, it was sustenance for a journey, yet secondary to the promise that defined his life. What is your wealth revealing about you? Is it a blessing, a test, or both? The stage is set. Each man, in his own time and place, stands on the brink of transformation. Their wealth, immense and impressive, will soon become the very catalyst that drives them toward their ultimate trials. Solomon, Job, and Abraham are about to walk paths that will test not only their faith, but their understanding of what it truly means to be blessed by God. The journey is just beginning, and the weight of their choices will shape their destinies, and perhaps ours as well. For Solomon, Job, and Abraham, wealth was not just a measure of success. It was a divine tool, a test, and often, a source of unforeseen challenges. Each man's journey toward prosperity revealed not only their strengths but also their vulnerabilities. How does one build wealth without being consumed by it? And when prosperity brings trials, how does faith endure? Solomon's fortune, the greatest of his time, was a product of divine wisdom and calculated strategy. Each year, his treasury received 666 talents equivalent to 22 tons of gold, a staggering sum worth about $1.38 billion today. His alliances with foreign rulers, such as Hiram of Tyre, brought wealth through trade routes that stretched across the ancient world. Ships returned laden with gold, silver, ivory, and exotic goods. Solomon's palace, adorned with the finest materials, was a testament to his kingdom's prosperity. But wealth, as Solomon would learn, is a double-edged sword. As Solomon's wealth grew, so did his responsibilities. The temple he built in Jerusalem was a masterpiece of devotion, funded by the immense resources at his disposal. Yet the very alliances that brought prosperity also brought compromise. Foreign wives entered his court, each bringing their gods and customs. Solomon, the wisest man, began to feel his heart torn. Could he serve both God and the demands of his empire? Solomon's alliances expanded his empire, but they also introduced foreign influences that tested his faith. How do your partnerships, whether in business, relationships, or other ventures, shape your values? Are they helping you remain faithful to your purpose, or pulling you away from it? The magnificence of Solomon's reign was unparalleled. The gold adorning his palace, the horses in his stables, and the ships in his ports spoke of a king whose wealth reached the ends of the earth. Yet with every treasure came a distraction. Solomon's heart, once devoted to God, began to waver under the weight of his success. Solomon's story raises a timeless question: can power and faith coexist? The king who started with wisdom and humility now stands at a crossroads. Will his wealth solidify his legacy, or will it lead to his downfall? Job's wealth, built on livestock and trade, was a reflection of his faithfulness and diligence. Owning 7,000 sheep, 3,000 camels and countless oxen and donkeys, valued at around $20 million in today's terms, Job was not only prosperous but respected. His camels connected him to trade routes that extended far beyond Uz, allowing him to engage in commerce that enriched his household. His servants, lands, and family thrived under his leadership. But Job never let his wealth define him. To Job, riches were a blessing to be used for others, not a measure of his worth. Job's prosperity was not just in material terms. It was rooted in his unwavering faith in God. Each morning he would rise early to offer sacrifices for his children, ensuring that their hearts remained pure before God. His wealth became a reflection of his righteousness, a symbol of God's favor and his dedication to doing what was right. Job cared for the widow, defended the fatherless, and was a pillar of his community. Job's wealth was built on integrity, not greed. He cared for the poor, defended the vulnerable, and lived with gratitude. How are you using your resources? Are they tools for generosity, or have they become sources of pride and control? Yet Job's prosperity drew the attention of the divine council. A wager was made. Was Job's faith genuine, or was it tied to his material blessings? In a single day, everything Job had built was taken from him. His livestock stolen, his servants killed, his children lost to a storm. Job, once the wealthiest man in Uz, now sat in ashes. Despite his losses, Job did not curse God. Instead, he proclaimed, "The Lord gave and the Lord has taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord." His response was a testament to a faith unshaken by circumstances. But as Job's suffering deepened, his friends began to question him, accusing him of hidden sin. What would he say to defend his integrity? Job's test begins not with the loss of wealth, but with the question it raises: when everything is stripped away, what remains? Would your faith survive such a trial, or is it tied to the comforts of life? Abraham's journey through Canaan was sustained by wealth that grew with each step. Flocks and herds multiplied, and alliances with rulers like Pharaoh and Abimelech brought him silver, servants, and land. Unlike Solomon or Job, Abraham's wealth was nomadic, supporting a life of constant movement. His fortune, valued at $10 to $20 million today, was not his focus but a tool to fulfill God's covenant. Abraham's wealth was built through faith and careful stewardship. When famine struck, he traveled to Egypt, where Pharaoh gifted him with livestock and servants. Later, his alliance with Abimelech brought more blessings. Yet, Abraham's true focus was not on accumulating riches, but on following God's promises. His wealth sustained his journey but never defined his identity. Abraham's wealth supported his journey, but it never defined him. What is the purpose of your wealth? Is it a tool for God's mission in your life, or an end in itself? The greatest test of Abraham's faith came not in the acquisition of wealth, but in the promises tied to it. 4 years he waited for the son through whom God's covenant would be fulfilled. When Isaac was finally born, Abraham's joy was complete. But then came the ultimate test. God asked him to sacrifice Isaac, the very child on whom the promise rested. Abraham, wealthy yet obedient, prepared to surrender everything. Standing on Mount Moriah, Abraham's heart ached with questions, yet his faith did not waver. As he raised the knife, God intervened, providing a ram in place of Isaac. This act of obedience solidified Abraham's legacy as the father of many nations. His wealth, while substantial, was a mere backdrop to his faith. Abraham's story challenges us to consider what we value most. Are you willing to place your greatest treasures, your ambitions, your relationships, your resources, on the altar, trusting that God's plan is greater? For Solomon, Job, and Abraham, wealth brought unique challenges. Solomon faced the slow erosion of his devotion as foreign influences crept into his court. Job's faith was tested by total loss, forcing him to confront the foundation of his trust in God. Abraham's obedience was stretched to the limit as he prepared to give up what he loved most. Each of these men teaches us something about the nature of wealth and faith. Solomon warns against the compromises that can come with success. Job reminds us that true faith transcends circumstances. Abraham shows us that obedience often requires surrender. What is your wealth teaching you about your character and your faith? Their stories are far from over. Solomon's growing compromises hint at a kingdom on the brink of division. Job's anguish sets the stage for a profound encounter with God. Abraham's willingness to sacrifice Isaac reveals the depths of trust that will define his legacy. As their journeys near their climax, one question remains: what will endure when the wealth fades? As you reflect on their trials, consider your own. How are you preparing for the moments when your faith will be tested? Is your life built on the eternal or the temporary? The answers may define your legacy just as they did for Solomon, Job, and Abraham. For Solomon, Job, and Abraham, wealth was never the true measure of their lives. Their journeys, marked by immense blessings and profound tests, revealed that riches, though powerful, are fleeting. At the end of their paths, what remained was not gold, livestock, or land, but faith, obedience, and the lessons they left for generations to come. What legacy will you leave when your wealth fades? In the twilight of Solomon's reign, the cracks in his legacy were undeniable. The 22 tons of gold he received annually, worth over $1.38 billion today, had funded grand temples and palaces. Yet his heart, once devoted to God, became divided. The foreign alliances that enriched him also brought idols into Israel, and the king who prayed for wisdom found himself entangled in the very temptations he once sought to avoid. As Solomon gazed upon his kingdom, he saw the seeds of its division. His compromises, born of wealth and power, weakened the unity of Israel. The temple he built remained a marvel, but his personal devotion had crumbled. Solomon's life asks us, what are you building with your resources? Will it stand as a testament to your faith, or will it crumble under the weight of misaligned priorities? Solomon's story is a warning about the dangers of a divided heart. Wealth, though immense, could not shield him from the consequences of spiritual compromise. His reign, once marked by peace and prosperity, ended in unrest and fracture. Are your ambitions and alliances strengthening your purpose, or are they leading you away from it? What will your legacy reveal about your faith? By the end of his journey, Job's fortunes were restored twofold, with a wealth equivalent to $40 million in today's terms. Yet Job knew that his true riches lay elsewhere. The trials he endured stripped away his possessions, his family, and his health, leaving him with nothing but his faith. It was there, in the ashes of his former life, that Job encountered God in a way that transformed him forever. The stories of Solomon, Job, and Abraham teach us that wealth is never just a blessing, it is also a test. Solomon's wisdom and vast riches revealed the dangers of a divided heart, showing that even the wisest can falter when wealth clouds devotion. Job's trials demonstrated that faith is most powerful when everything else is stripped away, reminding us to anchor our trust in God, not material possessions. Abraham's obedience proved that true wealth lies in surrendering everything to God's purpose. These ancient accounts hold practical lessons for today. Solomon's downfall warns us to guard our hearts against the seduction of power and luxury. Job's resilience encourages us to hold on to faith during life's darkest moments, knowing restoration comes through perseverance. Abraham's unwavering trust challenges us to ask, what are we willing to sacrifice to stay aligned with God's will? These men lived extraordinary lives, yet their struggles mirror the challenges we face in balancing faith and success. Ultimately, the wealth of Solomon, Job, and Abraham served a greater purpose, but their legacies were defined by their choices, not their riches. Their journeys remind us that material wealth is fleeting, but faith and character endure. Whether you are building a career, overcoming loss, or walking a path of obedience, their stories encourage you to examine your own relationship with wealth and purpose. Are you using your resources to glorify God, or have they become your master? If you had the wealth of Solomon, the resilience of Job, or the faith of Abraham, how would you handle it? Would you use your fortune for good, or would it expose the cracks in your character? Here's a challenge for you. Think about your own life. What is the greatest test your wealth or success has ever brought you? Share your thoughts in the comments below and don't forget to like this video. Your story might inspire someone else to find their true purpose. I had heard of you by the hearing of the ear, but now my eye sees you, Job declared. His faith, once tied to blessings, was now anchored in the sovereignty and goodness of God alone. Job's story shows that true resilience comes not from what we own, but from whom we trust. When trials come, can you find peace in God's presence, even when your circumstances make no sense? Though his fortune was doubled, Job's greatest restoration was spiritual. He had learned to hold his wealth loosely, knowing that everything ultimately belongs to God. Job's life challenges us. When everything is taken away, what remains? Is your faith strong enough to endure, or is it tied to the comforts of life? For Abraham, wealth was never the goal, but a resource for fulfilling God's promises. His fortune, valued at $10 to $20 million today, sustained his family and followers through years of wandering. Yet his greatest test came when God asked for Isaac, the son who embodied the promise of a nation. On Mount Moriah, with knife in hand, Abraham proved his ultimate trust in God, willing to surrender everything he had been given. The voice of God stopped him, and a ram appeared as a substitute. Abraham's obedience not only spared Isaac but solidified his legacy as the father of many nations. His wealth, while substantial, was a mere backdrop to his faith. Abraham's story asks us to consider, what are you holding on to that God may be asking you to surrender? Are you willing to trust him even when the cost seems unbearable? Through his faith, Abraham became more than a wealthy man. He became the foundation of a spiritual lineage that would shape history. His life reminds us, true wealth is not in what you own, but in what you surrender to God. What remains when the wealth fades? For Solomon, wealth revealed the dangers of a divided heart. For Job, it became a stage for resilience and restoration. For Abraham, it supported a journey of obedience and trust. Each man's story converges on a singular truth: wealth is temporary, but faith is eternal. As you reflect on their stories, ask yourself, what defines your wealth? Is it your possessions or your faith? When your riches are gone, what will remain of your character and your legacy? Their lives serve as mirrors for our own struggles with success, loss, and purpose. Solomon warns us of the compromises that come with unchecked ambition. Job teaches us that suffering can deepen our connection to God. Abraham challenges us to trust in God's promises, even when they seem impossible. Are you building a life rooted in what will last? How are you using your resources, whether great or small, to serve a purpose greater than yourself? In the end, Solomon's kingdom fell into division, Job's wealth was restored but held lightly, and Abraham's covenant endured as the foundation of nations. Each man faced the same question we must confront today: what is the true measure of wealth? Is it the gold we gather or the faith we cultivate? Wealth is a tool, not a destination. It can build empires or destroy hearts depending on how it is used. Are you a steward of your blessings, or are you letting them define you? Their stories echo across time, offering not just lessons but a challenge: to live with purpose, to give with generosity, and to trust in God through every trial. Solomon, Job, and Abraham remind us that true wealth is found not in what we possess, but in who we become. So, what legacy will you leave? When the gold has faded and the livestock are gone, when the journey is over, what will truly endure? The answer lies not in the treasures of this world, but in the faith that carries us beyond it.